What happens when one of the most legendary voices in music history refuses to play nice with daytime television? Well, buckle up, because what went down between Chaka Khan and Joy Behar on The View became one of the most explosive moments in talk show history. We're talking about a clash so intense that it ended with the Queen of Funk storming off the set, leaving the entire studio in complete shock. This wasn't your typical celebrity tiff. This was a full-blown confrontation that had everyone picking sides. Before we get into it, make sure you hit that subscribe button and drop a comment below telling me whose side you're on in this whole situation, because trust me, you're going to have an opinion by the end of this. So let's set the scene. Chaka Khan walks onto the View set, and right from the jump, you can feel something is different. She's got that energy, that presence that only a true icon can bring, and the audience is going wild. The applause is thunderous, people are on their feet, and you can see the other hosts smiling and clapping along. But if you look closely at Joy Behar's face, there's something else there. Maybe it's skepticism, maybe it's that contrarian energy she's known for. But whatever it is, it's about to set off a chain reaction nobody saw coming. The segment starts off pleasant enough. Whoopi Goldberg does the introductions, talking about Chaka's incredible career, her influence on music, her recent projects. Chaka is gracious. She's smiling, she's talking about her new album and her upcoming tour dates. The conversation flows naturally for the first few minutes, with the hosts asking about her creative process and what inspires her after all these years in the industry. Chaka is in her element, speaking passionately about music, about the craft, about staying true to yourself as an artist. Everything seems fine. Then Joy Behar jumps in, and this is where things start to shift. Joy, in her typical style, decides to pivot the conversation. She's not interested in the music anymore. She wants to talk politics. She brings up a recent comment Chaka made in another interview about staying out of political debates and focusing on her art. Joy's tone is light, almost joking, but there's an edge to it. She says something like, "You know, Chaka, some people might say, that's a privilege, to be able to just focus on music while the rest of us are dealing with what's happening in this country." The studio gets a little quieter. Chaka's smile doesn't fade, but you can see her shoulders stiffen slightly. She responds calmly, saying that she didn't say she doesn't care about what's happening. She said she expresses herself through her music, not through political statements. She explains that art has always been her form of activism, that songs can carry messages deeper than any soundbite on a talk show ever could. It's a thoughtful response, the kind that should move the conversation forward naturally. But Joy isn't letting it go. She presses further, suggesting that maybe that worked in the 70s and 80s. But today, people expect more from their celebrities. She brings up other artists who are vocal about their political stances, implying that silence is complicity. The way she says it isn't outright accusatory, but it's clear she's challenging Chaka, pushing her to defend her position. The other hosts exchange glances. You can see Whoopi shifting in her seat, and Sunny Hostin looks like she wants to jump in but isn't sure how. Chaka takes a breath, and her response is measured but firm. She says, "With all due respect, Joy, I've been using my voice for decades. I was singing about women's empowerment, about black pride, about social issues before some of these think pieces were even being written. My music speaks. Just because I'm not on Twitter every day doesn't mean I'm silent." That gets some applause from the audience, a few whoops of support, and you can see Joy's expression change. She's not used to being pushed back on like this, especially not on her own show. Joy doubles down. She says something along the lines of, "Well, that's great, Chaka, but we're living in different times now. The stakes are higher. We need people with platforms like yours to speak up directly, not just through metaphors in songs." And then she adds, almost as a throwaway comment, "Besides, how many young people are really listening to your music these days anyway?" The implication is clear. She's suggesting that Chaka's relevance is questionable, that her impact is somehow diminished. The audience reacts with gasps and uncomfortable murmurs. The other hosts look genuinely shocked. Alyssa Farah Griffin's eyes go wide, and Sarah N. actually puts her hand over her mouth. Whoopi immediately tries to interject, saying something like, "Okay, let's just..." But Chaka raises her hand, signaling that she's got this. Her expression has completely changed now. The warmth is gone, replaced by something steely and focused. Chaka leans forward slightly and says, "Let me tell you something, Joy. I have sold over 70 million records worldwide. I've won 10 Grammy Awards. I have fans across every generation, including plenty of young people who appreciate real music, real artistry. My relevance isn't determined by how often I argue on cable news. I've influenced everyone from Mary J. Blige to Beyoncé to Ariana Grande. These artists have cited me as inspiration. So don't sit there and question my impact or my reach." The sharpness in her voice cuts through the studio like a knife. Joy tries to laugh it off, saying she was just making a point, that she didn't mean any disrespect. But her body language tells a different story. She's defensive now, arms crossed, leaning back in her chair. She says something like, "I'm just saying that in this climate, we need more than just songs, we need action, we need voices speaking out plainly." And Chaka fires back, and I'm just saying that you don't get to define how I use my voice or my platform. You don't get to tell me what kind of activism is valid. That's not your place. The tension is palpable now. The audience is completely silent, watching this unfold like a tennis match. Sunny Hostin tries to redirect, asking Chaka about her upcoming tour, trying to bring the energy back to something positive. But Joy, perhaps feeling embarrassed or wanting to have the last word, interjects again. She says, "Look, all I'm saying is that staying neutral is a choice, and that choice has consequences. Some of us don't have the luxury of just making art and calling it a day." That's when Chaka's expression changes completely. She's no longer just defending herself, she's done with this conversation entirely. She says, with a quiet intensity that's somehow more powerful than yelling, "Joy, you don't know anything about my life, about what I've been through, about the battles I've fought. You sit here in your comfortable chair on your talk show and you judge people for not performing activism the way you think they should. That's not solidarity, that's ego. And I'm not going to sit here and be lectured by someone who thinks her way is the only way." Joy tries to respond, her voice rising slightly, saying that she's been fighting for progressive causes for years, that she has every right to have this conversation. But Chaka cuts her off, which almost never happens on The View. She says, "You have the right to have whatever conversation you want, but you don't have the right to disrespect me while doing it. I came here to talk about my music, to connect with fans, not to be put on trial for not being political enough for your standards." Whoopi finally manages to get a word in, trying to calm things down, suggesting they take a quick break. But Chaka is already unhooking her microphone. The camera captures this moment in real time, her hands moving to remove the mic pack, her face set in determination. Joy says something else. The audio doesn't quite pick it up clearly, but it's enough to seal the deal. Chaka stands up, places her microphone on the table with a decisive thud, and says clearly, "I'm done here." The studio erupts in chaos. Some audience members are gasping, others are applauding. The other hosts are all trying to talk at once. Alyssa is saying, "Wait, Chaka." Sarah is looking between Joy and Chaka with wide eyes. Sunny has her hands up like she's trying to physically stop what's happening, and Whoopi is calling for a commercial break. But Chaka is already walking off the stage, her posture straight, her head held high, not looking back once. Joy calls after her, saying something about not being able to handle a debate, but it just makes the situation worse. The audience's reaction is mixed now. Some people are booing, though it's not entirely clear if they're booing Chaka for leaving or Joy for pushing too hard. The cameras cut away quickly, but not before capturing the absolute shock on everyone's faces. This isn't supposed to happen on The View. Guests don't just walk off, but Chaka Khan just did. The show comes back from commercial break, and you can immediately tell that the energy has completely shifted. The remaining hosts are sitting there, and there's this awkward tension hanging in the air like smoke. Whoopi is the first to speak, and she's clearly trying to regain control of the situation. She says something diplomatic, acknowledging that things got heated, that sometimes conversations about important topics can become passionate. She's doing damage control, but you can hear in her voice that even she's not entirely sure how to handle what just happened. Joy, on the other hand, seems almost defensive, maybe even a little defiant. She jumps in quickly, saying that she stands by what she said, that these are important conversations that need to be had. She insists that she wasn't trying to disrespect Chaka, she was just challenging her perspective, which is what they do on the show every day. The way she says it, it's like she's trying to justify the whole thing, to make it seem like this was just a normal debate that Chaka couldn't handle. But the audience isn't really buying it. You can hear the uncomfortable silence, the lack of applause that usually follows Joy's statements. Sunny Hostin, who had been trying to mediate during the confrontation, speaks up. She says that while healthy debate is important, there's a difference between challenging someone and dismissing their life's work. She doesn't say Joy's name directly, but the implication is crystal clear. She points out that Chaka Khan is a legend, someone who has earned respect, not just for her music, but for the decades of artistry and influence she's contributed. Sunny's voice has this edge to it, like she's been wanting to say this for a while, and now the floodgates are open. She adds that questioning someone's relevance, especially someone of Chaka's caliber, isn't debate, it's condescension. Joy immediately pushes back. She says she never questioned Chaka's talent, just her approach to using her platform. She's getting more animated now, her hands gesturing as she talks. She insists that celebrities have a responsibility in times like these, that they can't just hide behind their art and pretend the world isn't burning. Alyssa Farah Griffin tries to step in, suggesting that maybe people have different ways of contributing to society, and that's okay. But Joy cuts her off, saying that's exactly the kind of both sides thinking that lets people off the hook. Sarah N., who has been mostly quiet through all of this, finally speaks up. She says that what makes her uncomfortable about the whole exchange is that it felt like Joy was telling Chaka how to be black, how to be an artist, how to use her voice. She says it gently, but firmly, and you can see Joy's face change. That comment clearly hits a nerve. Joy responds quickly. saying that's not what she was doing at all, that she was simply pointing out that in the current political climate, neutrality isn't really possible. But Sarah doesn't back down. She says that Chaka wasn't claiming neutrality. She was saying her activism looks different, and that should be respected. The conversation keeps spiraling, with the hosts essentially debating what just happened rather than moving on to their next segment. Whoopi tries multiple times to steer them toward the next topic, but it's like trying to put out a fire with a teaspoon. The audience is engaged, though. You can hear people reacting, some agreeing, some clearly on Joy's side, others firmly Team Chaka. It's rare to see the view panel this divided, especially on air. Usually, they present a more unified front, even when they disagree. But this situation has cracked that facade wide open. Joy then makes another comment that adds fuel to the fire. She says something like, "You know what? Maybe I'm old school, but I believe if you have a platform, you use it for more than just self-promotion." And Sunny immediately fires back, asking if Joy thinks that's what Chaka was doing, just promoting herself. Joy says that's not what she meant, but Sunny presses her, asking what exactly she did mean then. The exchange between them is getting tense now too, and you can see Whoopi physically lean forward, ready to intervene if this escalates further. Meanwhile, social media is absolutely exploding. The show's producers are probably watching the live tweets and posts flooding in, and the reactions are all over the place. Some people are praising Chaka for standing up for herself and not tolerating disrespect. Others are siding with Joy, saying she was just asking legitimate questions and Chaka overreacted. The hashtags start trending almost immediately. Team Chaka and Team Joy are both gaining traction, with people sharing clips of the walk-off, breaking down every word that was said, analyzing body language, tone, everything. Back on the show, Whoopi finally manages to fully redirect the conversation. She announces that they need to move on to their next segment, and you can hear the relief in her voice. But before they transition, Joy gets one more comment in. She says, looking directly at the camera, that she hopes Chaka is okay, and that maybe they can have a calmer conversation in the future. It sounds conciliatory on the surface, but there's something about the way she says it that feels almost patronizing, like she's the adult in the room extending an olive branch to someone who threw a tantrum. That doesn't go unnoticed by viewers, and it definitely doesn't go unnoticed by the other hosts. As the show continues, you can tell that the co-hosts are still processing what happened. During commercial breaks, viewers at home can only imagine what's being said. But when they come back for subsequent segments, there's still this underlying tension. Joy seems slightly more subdued, though she's clearly not backing down from her position. Sunny and Sarah both seem more engaged with each other than with Joy for the rest of the episode. Alyssa is playing it safe, not really picking sides but contributing where she can. And Whoopi, bless her, is working overtime to keep things moving and prevent any other explosions. The next day, the fallout continues. News outlets pick up the story, entertainment shows are discussing it, and everyone has an opinion. Some commentators defend Joy's right to ask tough questions, arguing that celebrities need to be held accountable for their influence and their silence on important issues. They frame it as Joy doing her job as a journalist and talk show host, pushing beyond the softball questions to get to something meaningful. These defenders claim that Chaka walking off was an avoidance tactic, a way to escape scrutiny rather than engage with legitimate criticism. But the counter-narrative is just as strong, if not stronger. Music journalists, fellow artists, and cultural commentators come to Chaka's defense. They point out her extensive history of activism through her music, the barriers she broke as a black woman in rock and funk, the way she's used her platform for decades to uplift and inspire. They argue that Joy's comments about relevance and young people not listening to her music were not only factually incorrect, but also deeply disrespectful to a living legend. Think pieces start appearing about ageism in entertainment, about how society treats older artists, especially older black women artists, and whether their contributions are properly valued. Several celebrities weigh in on social media. Some of them are diplomatic, saying both women have valid points and that respectful dialogue is important, but others are more direct. A few prominent artists who have cited Chaka as an influence post tributes to her, highlighting her impact on their own careers. One major pop star shares a video of herself as a teenager singing a Chaka Khan song, captioning it with something about how legends deserve respect. The implication is clear, even if the post doesn't mention the View incident directly. Another artist, known for being outspoken, posts a thread about how tired they are of talk show hosts treating musicians like they owe the world political dissertations instead of art. The post gets thousands of retweets and likes within hours. It resonates with a lot of people who feel like there's been this shift in how we treat artists, where their music isn't enough anymore, where they're constantly being asked to perform their politics for public consumption. The thread continues, pointing out that not everyone processes the world the same way, that some people create change through their art, while others do it through direct action, and both approaches are valid. Music industry insiders start sharing their own stories about Chaka, about her generosity, her mentorship, her quiet acts of activism that never made headlines. Stories emerge about scholarships she's funded, community programs she's supported, young artists she's helped without seeking credit. One producer shares a story about how Chaka once spent hours working with a young singer who was struggling with confidence, giving her time and wisdom freely. Another musician talks about how Chaka showed up to support a benefit concert for music education without any fanfare or publicity. These stories paint a picture of someone whose activism is deeply personal and consistent, even if it's not always performed for cameras. What becomes clear through all these testimonials is that Chaka's approach to using her platform is actually incredibly intentional. She's not silent, she's strategic. She's not disengaged, she's selective about where and how she speaks out. And for a lot of people, especially those who know her work intimately, Joy's characterization of her as someone who just makes music and ignores the world feels fundamentally inaccurate. It feels like Joy made assumptions based on a single interview comment without doing the deeper research into who Chaka Khan actually is and what she's actually done. The views, ratings for that episode are through the roof. The clip of Chaka walking off becomes one of the most watched moments in the show's recent history. The video gets millions of views across different platforms. With people making reaction videos, breakdown videos, commentary videos, it becomes a cultural moment, the kind of thing that transcends the usual talk show drama because it touches on something deeper. But the reaction from viewers is polarized. Some people are expressing support for more confrontational interviews, while others are saying the show crossed a line. That what happened to Chaka was ambush journalism disguised as conversation. There are calls for Joy to apologize, with online petitions and social media campaigns demanding accountability. One petition gets over 100,000 signatures, asking Joy to publicly apologize to Chaka for disrespecting a legend. The petition includes a long list of Chaka's accomplishments, her awards, her influence, her activism, making the case that Joy's comments were not only rude but factually wrong. Joy addresses the situation a few days later on the show. She starts by saying that she's been reading the comments and the articles, that she's aware of how the conversation with Chaka has been perceived. She maintains that her intentions were never to disrespect Chaka Khan, that she has enormous respect for her body of work. But, and there's always a but, she also stands by her belief that public figures with large platforms have a responsibility to speak out on critical issues. She frames it as a difference in philosophy rather than a personal attack. She doesn't really apologize, not in the traditional sense. It's more of an explanation, a justification for her approach. She says something like, "I understand that some people think I went too far, but I believe in having these difficult conversations, and sometimes that means making people uncomfortable." The non-apology doesn't sit well with a lot of people. Social media erupts again, with many pointing out that Joy seems more interested in defending her position than acknowledging how her words affected Chaka. The phrase non-apology starts trending in relation to Joy's statement. People dissect her words, noting that she never actually said sorry, never acknowledged that maybe questioning someone's relevance on live television was inappropriate, never admitted that her comments about young people not listening to Chaka's music were dismissive and factually incorrect. Some people appreciate her consistency, her refusal to back down from her beliefs even under pressure. They see it as integrity, as someone who won't be bullied by the court of public opinion. These supporters argue that Joy was doing her job, that tough interviews are necessary, that celebrities shouldn't be coddled just because they're famous. They point out that The View has always been a place for heated debates, and that walking off instead of engaging is a choice. But many others see it as stubbornness, an inability to recognize when she's crossed a line. They argue that there's a difference between asking tough questions and being disrespectful, between challenging someone and belittling them. They point out that Joy could have asked about Chaka's views on activism without questioning her relevance or implying that her music doesn't reach young people. The conversation could have been productive instead of combative. What makes this whole situation so compelling is that it touches on so many larger issues. It's not just about one uncomfortable interview. It's about generational differences in activism, about respect for legacy artists, about the role of celebrities in political discourse, about who gets to define what meaningful contribution looks like. It's about whether confrontational interviewing is journalism or just rudeness, about the line between challenging someone and attacking them. It's about ageism, about how we treat older Black women in entertainment, about whether their decades of work and influence are properly valued or dismissed once they're no longer dominating the charts. The incident also raises questions about The View itself as a platform. Is it a place for thoughtful discussion or just manufactured conflict? Do the hosts sometimes prioritize getting a viral moment over treating their guests with respect? And when does healthy debate cross over into hostility? These are questions that fans of the show and critics alike are asking. As weeks go by, the story doesn't completely fade from public consciousness. It keeps getting referenced in discussions about talk show culture, about how we treat artists, about the nature of celebrity activism. Chaka herself hasn't made any lengthy public statements about the incident beyond a brief social media post thanking her fans for their support. She doesn't seem interested in prolonging the drama or engaging in a back and forth with Joy. That silence is interpreted in different ways. Some see it as dignified, as taking the high road and letting her work speak for itself. Joy continues, hosting The View, business as usual. The show moves on to other topics, other guests, other controversies. But there's a sense that something shifted that day. What's undeniable is that the confrontation between Chaka Khan and Joy Behar became one of those defining moments that people will remember. It's already being referenced in media studies courses, in discussions about interview techniques, in debates about activism and celebrity. The image of Chaka Khan unhooking her microphone and walking off that stage with her head held high, that's not going away anytime soon. And ultimately, that might be the most powerful statement of all. In a world where everyone is constantly debating, arguing, trying to prove their point and have the last word, sometimes the most impactful thing you can do is simply refuse to participate. Chaka didn't storm off in tears or anger. She made a calm, deliberate choice that her time and her dignity were worth more than continuing a conversation that had stopped being respectful. Whether you think she was right or wrong to walk off, whether you side with her or with Joy, there's something undeniably powerful about that moment of self-possession. So that's the story of what happened when a legendary artist refused to be talked down to on live television. It's messy, it's complicated, and it doesn't have a neat resolution where everyone learns a lesson and moves on. But that's what makes it real. That's what makes it compelling. It's a mirror reflecting back all our own beliefs about respect, about activism, about what we owe each other in conversations, about how we treat people who have given us decades of art and inspiration. Make sure you hit that subscribe button if you haven't already, and drop a comment below answering this question. Do you think Chaka Khan was right to walk off The View, or should she have stayed and continued the debate with Joy Behar? I want to hear what you think.